if there's not a sense of cultural base of education, the alignment's not going to work.
The gift that we have is that it's within us, and we can truly start the healing from the inside out.
To learn, sign me up. I don't care.
What's up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, and being part of that team, we've reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're broadcasting live on February 9th. Yes, we are in the month of February, finally, but we just keep on getting snow. I guess when I was in school in this country, they said snow, Canada, winter. But man, every few days, snow, snow, snow. Put the brakes on it, please and thank you. Enough is enough. But joking aside, it's all good. And you are watching Black Canada Talking, where Black Canadians give their points, thoughts, opinions, POVs on topics, subjects from a local, provincial, national, and international perspective. So that's what we're doing here today. And we are very blessed and highly favored. Oh, you know what? Let me go to this. Let me do this because we have a full show. So subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And 2, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, please email me at dr.vibe at the dr.vibeshow.com. And we can't live without our good friend Dr. Tachi, who's in charge of Indie Soup Media, which is an independent content creators platform based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yes, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Run by our good friend Dr. Tachi. It's about 30 independent content creators. I'm actually a member of the advisory board for that, and I have a number of my conversations on that platform. So go check out Indie Soup Media. You know what? What am I going to do? You know what? We're going to go for a quick commercial, and we're going to back a regular and a gentleman we hope becomes more of a regular on Black Canada Talking. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds. And here we go.
If the black dollar was not important, they wouldn't be doing these type of commercials to get your business back.
The same people who don't want gun checks, mental health checks, all for open carry, and when your kid gets shot in school, they offer thoughts and prayers. Make it make sense.
Y'all don't understand how our government works.
I think the lesson that we learned from that 4 years is how miserable people are. Their misery is contagious.
All right, that's Primetime Saturday with Aisha K. Staggers and Laura Lala Key. Saturdays, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific. And what did they say? It's 2 Black American women trying to make the sense out of the nonsense going on in America. And let's get to it. So we have 2 friends. Well, a gentleman who's a friend, and we're generating some friendship with this other gentleman today. So first off, Cesar, what is going on, Cesar? How are you today? What's been going on in your world? You got to unmute yourself, my brother. You've been around long enough. You should be good at that by now. Come on now.
You would think. No, hi, everyone. Hi, brothers and sisters, and hi to all of our allies. I'm good, thank you. AKA, I have a busted knee, unfortunately.
Oh.
And I don't know how that happened, but hey, we're getting older. That must be it.
When you say busted, was there ligaments, cartilage? What's going on? We're all concerned.
Swollen and limping, but it's better than yesterday.
Well, hold on a second. Did you pass it on to me? Because like for the last 3 or 4 days, I've had a swollen right knee, and it's stiff. And when you walk on it, it's painful.
Yeah.
Same. And I don't know what I did. I have no idea. But there's like it's like
you just woke up like that. You woke up with that pain, right?
Yeah, I got up and went, what is this so sore?
Yeah. Same here. So,
Well,
yeah,
okay, all right. Oh,
no,
well,
but
you're gonna get through it, brother. You're gonna get through it.
indeed, we good. We good. There was the federal launch of Black History Month on Wednesday, and it was interesting, notably because it's the last one under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So he was emotional, and he truly wanted to be there. And for all the criticism and rightful criticism, of course, regarding the management of monies for Black people, we can at least say that he did do something. The next government doesn't even recognize systemic racism. I mean, likely a conservative government. So we have to see what happens next.
All right. Well, was it well attended?
I thought it was well attended. Less people than in past years, but yeah, well attended with
Okay.
Black leaders from all over Canada.
Well, I'll just say something. I got an invitation to that the day before, so I ain't gonna.
Oh,
I
the
like,
day before.
yeah, and I don't know what it is with some organizations, including the federal government. People in at least my area of media, Black media, we find out about these things like less than 24 hours. So we're just supposed to drop everything and come. Well, hello, I live in Toronto. Hello, it's at least a 5-minute drive in good weather, four and a
Yeah.
half, 5 hours drive to. I'm going, no, but hey, that's another conversation. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. But we have another gentleman here today, some guy named Kevin Friday. What's this guy
Hi
named
there.
Kevin Friday? What's going on?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Glad to have you back. What's been going on in your
Thank
world?
Well, in my world, I do a lot of dance on the side recreationally. Of course, I have my day job that continues on in the insurance business. And as a hobby, sometimes I like to look at what's going on in social media with regards to our political discourse. So that's something I've been doing for quite a number of years. I dabbled in politics many years ago, so
Okay.
sometimes I like to keep up with a little bit of what's going on.
Well, talking about if you've been dibbling and dabbling, I think you've been watching what's going on, maybe a little bit in America, a little bit.
A little bit, a little bit.
Okay. All right. So that's going to be our first two conversation topics. So first things
Okay.
off, we're going to talk about money, power, but no respect. 47 and Musk versus American democracy. Who wants to start off? I guess, Cesar, you wanted to bring this up, and I know Kevin will certainly add. So, Cesar, go ahead.
Well, how can I put it? The most powerful man in the world is walking in tandem with the richest man in the world. Two great egos. What could go wrong? And how long would the bromance last? As we are seeing in terms of how they're going through the US government and the institutions, it is really something interesting in terms of many people talking about how democracy dies and fascism, etc., etc. But also, we cannot forget what legal grounds, constitutional grounds, Elon Musk has in the powers that he is using and abusing thanks to Donald Trump. The way I look at it, is it more a crisis of democracy or is it more a constitutional crisis in which America is in? And the answer really comes down, I mean, I often repeat this. So I usually talk about four men who represent four institutions that explain not only why Trump won, but also why Musk is able to do what he's doing. Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party, Joe Biden and the institution of the White House that should have literally arrested whoever committed January 6th, January 6th, January 7th, and definitely by January 20th, 2021. Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice, Justice Roberts and the Supreme Court in basically this right-wing Supreme Court that along the three other men and the three other institutions will be looked at harshly in history. The consequences of what they're doing are not truly felt now. Of course, we can talk about Roe versus Wade and women losing in half of the U.S. the right to abortions, but you really got to look at 2 or 3 generations in terms of how does an empire fall? How does a society fall? And when you have the alliance of the most powerful and the richest men, it is quite a dynamic duo, but a dynamic duo in which, to give example, Time magazine cover of Elon Musk behind the Resolute desk, which would belong to Donald Trump, his reaction brings to a law of power, which is to never outshine the master, to never outshine, aka the number one. Allow me to give a quick historical example, if you don't mind. Do you see? You can't really see his photo, so I'm gonna bring it up closer. It's behind me right here. One of my heroes. You probably don't know who this person is by the photo. It's normal. 19th century man, but you all know him. This is Alexandre Dumas. Oh, I'm trying to get it right with the light. This is Alexandre Dumas, the writer of the Three Musketeers. Interestingly, we can look at Elon Musk and his engineers as a bunch of musketeers. Why? The basis of the Three Musketeers is actually rooted in history. So, in the 17th century, the most powerful man of Europe, King Louis XIV, the Sun King, did not appreciate that basically the Minister of the Economy, Nicolas Fouquet, had a nicer castle than him, a nicer palace, which notably led to the building of the Versailles Palace. And one of the things that happened is that he ended up imprisoning Nicolas Fouquet, and it is strongly believed by historians that Nicolas Fouquet is the man behind the Iron Mask, if you see the connections. Fouquet was arguably the richest man in France, in the French Empire, but the Sun King was the most powerful man. And if you remember Trump number one, Steve Bannon had a lot of influence, which notably led to his eviction out of the White House. The point I'm trying to make here is that in the strategy that many are calling, I mean, at least I'm calling, organized chaos, it seems like they're basically spraying left and right and seeing what sticks. We can already see that many of Trump's executive orders have been halted, just as many of actions of Musk are being stopped in courts. More and more people are coming out in protest. So in this strategy, as they had mentioned, they are not hypocrites. They did mention they will basically swarm the courts with the attempt to remodel America, notably, as in our second segment, where we talk about Christian nationalism. But what is really happening 3 weeks into the Trump's presidency, and really as a continuation of the Trump's first term, is a continuous erosion of American democracy through institutions, and as such, through the faith that people should have towards the institutions. Don't get me wrong, the system is broken. They are just ensuring to break it further because for them, contrarily to notably what Trump ran on, notably the price of eggs, the price of gas, we're talking about an administration that never had as much wealth, aka billionaires. They don't care about the common men and women, aka MAGA voters, realities, and as such, this is indeed what we see in Russia in a new sense. Is the death of the liberal democracy, is the death of America as a world interventionist power. It is a rise of a techno-oligarchy. It is a rise of a Christian nationalist, aka Christian, white Christian fascist, nation, at least in this term. And we're only 3 weeks in. The damages will be strong.
Kevin, I'll just before you jump in, I was listening to NPR this week. They played back an interview with Steve Bannon back in the day where he was saying this was their game plan to come in and just like, woof, just do the mass, just like throw everything and see whatever sticks. And also to make sure that no one could concentrate on one thing. They just throw it at mass. So I'll pass it over to you, Kevin. You can tell us what you think about 47, Eli, American democracy.
I think it's ironic because Trump's rise to fame was partly on the backs of the conspiracy movement. If you could remember it, I don't know if you guys know a guy named Alex Jones, who was, I think he hosted him even and had an interview with him, and he jumped on that bandwagon. The whole premise behind it, if you put aside just the because there's different fractions, right? You have your a xenophobic fringe, your racist fringe, and then you have your traditional conservatives that they want social conservatism, and then you have another fraction of which what I would call like the conspiracy fraction. So these are the people that think that there's a global conspiracy to centralize government under some type of world power. Okay, it's been talked about for decades. But Trump was supposed to be to them the disruptor of that plan because he was the guy coming out and saying, "Hey, I was part of it and I'm outing it." That's kind of his whole shtick, right? Like participated in. He was saying that he participated in buying politicians, something no one would say. So what's ironic is that a lot of people were voting against an oligarchy and they're getting an oligarchy. So it's almost like he used them to provide some type of fake opposition to what they thought they were opposing, only for his own ambitions and his own. To be quite honest, I'm not even sure how committed Trump is to any ideology. I think he just wants to show that he can win for his own personal ego. And I think he's willing to use the right to get there. And I think elements of the right and elements of the oligarchy are using him. So because amongst it's quite possible that within the oligarchy you're going to have people who are pro progressive and people who are pro traditional, pro limited government, pro rolling back things for their own agenda. For Elon Musk, it's obvious. He's a guy that's a big time technology guy. He wants to have electric cars. He wants to send people to Mars. I think that he has an opportunity to have a lot of influence in making that happen if he can almost essentially buy off the presidency. But that's a betrayal. That is a betrayal to some of that base. That base, they're against what they voted for.
But they don't care.
No, they don't. They don't see it because they're emotionally invested now. They've emotionally invested in this movement. And now what's happened is that they have to start making excuses, kind of like all the people that supported Trump because they were against what was going on with Israel Palestine. They now have to walk it back, many of the people in the Arab communities. But it's cognitive dissonance. What they're essentially saying is, if I have to cut off my nose to spite my face, then that's what I have to do. That's basically it's a kind of sabotage.
Okay, Cesar, I know you want to add.
I was going to add to what Kevin said. Trump is not about having an ideology because the truth of the matter is simply that it's first and foremost for Trump, winning the elections was a capital reality for him. He loses, he goes to jail. He wins, he pushes on his agenda, whatever it is, aka Whoever pays him the most, he will help him. As they say, he's a transactional president. Ultimately, we have to be honest. For those who want to call Trump a monster, a demon, whatever you want to call it, let us be factual here. Donald Trump is a creation of the American racist, capitalist, and entertainment driven society. He is not an accident out of nowhere. He is the
Right.
result of the society in which he has been a public figure. We are in 2025 for at least 40 years. This is not some Adolf Hitler that the nation of Germany discovers in 1932 because of elections. And he was only known 10 years before in Bavaria. No, this is Donald Trump, who has been a celebrity, who has been a failed billionaire, but failed in quotation mark, because if you can declare bankruptcy, I believe 4 or 6 times, and still have the banks giving you money, aka loans, you are a success. But you are a
Mhm.
success because of the privilege of your identities. Let a black man declare bankruptcy once and see how many banks are going to entrust him with loans for further projects. Let a black man do such a thing as January 6th and see if he can even be free to run again for the elections. Let a black man have the language that Donald Trump had on the Access Hollywood tapes and see or R. Kelly on the national stage. So Donald Trump is a creation of America's racist, capitalist, and entertainment culture. And as such, power is the goal. Power is the intent. A fixed agenda. People say Project 2025. I am not here to disagree. But quite honestly, the difference is this. When you first come to power, unexpectedly, because of jealousy of the previous president, aka Barack Obama, and you become surprised that you even won, the second time, you become so fortunate to win. And let's be honest, Trump did not win a thin margin. He didn't win so much because people voted for him. He won more because many people who would have and should have voted Democrat didn't go out to vote. So there is a direct blame to Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, even Joe Biden, and the whole Democratic Party. So now here you have this man here with what he clearly and honestly did declare a campaign of retribution, of revenge. I mean, he has pulled off the security clearances of Joe Biden, just as when he's cutting off, how do you call that? When he's cutting off funds, basically dismantling USAID, Agency for International Development, and yet that's the same man that a few years ago, 2019 or 2020, he was praising the same agency alongside his daughter, Ivanka. So it's a mindset thing that's bent on power and kind of like cancer, spreads us and corrupts anything and everything that does not align to its ways. And as such, it is truly, as I believe it was General Milley who had declared, if Trump comes back to power, it might be the end of America. No, let's not be overly alarmist. America will not stop existing in 2029, aka in 4 years. America will still exist. But understand where I'm going here. The Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, fell in the year 476, but it had been in decline for over 2 centuries. It was a long decline, a stretched out decline, but it was an assured decline. The British Empire took decades for what many clearly saw as an assured decline. The Portuguese Empire, same thing. 1975, the conflicts in Angola. So Donald Trump, as I've always said, if there's one thing I absolutely love about this man, he exposes America, but truly also the Western world for what it is. Just a quick example, as we're talking about Trump and Musk, You can see a concentration of powers, notably in terms of Musk owning Twitter, in terms of even if you get rid of him, Twitter, Starlink, SpaceX, uh, you name it, Tesla. The man becomes so intrinsically linked to the system that he still remains within, kind of like the Matrix. You think you turn off the TV, but it's all over you. And the influence of Trump, when you look at, I think it was last week, Portugal, a meeting of the right wing nationalist movements of Europe. Trump, as president of the United States, is basically at the avant garde, at the forefront of this right nationalist, right wing Christian movement all over the Western world because of the changing nature of humanity. A changing nature, Dr. Vibe, which I've said more than once. All statistics claim that by the year 2050, so in 25 years, up to 2100, the end of the century, my daughter most likely will still be alive. It is estimated that 1/3 of all human beings will be African. I didn't say black, African. These white nationalists are, excuse my language, of such a reality. They are terrified of the growth of number of Muslims, not because of conversions contrary to the lie that too many Muslims say, but because of birth rate. They are terrified, number three, of the growth and influence of China and BRICS nation. Donald Trump even had threatened nations who would reject the US dollar as the currency of trade. You see what I mean? That speaks volumes. So now his whole rhetoric in terms of what is it again? Panama Canal, Greenland, Canada as the 51st state, Gaza turned into a Riviera, and he's having to walk back on it. This is a campaign. So the official campaign is gone. Now is the governing part. It's a governance of fear, of control. It's basically, we often say, and I don't want any of our people to be offended by this, but let's be honest as Black people. We all know how too often in the Black communities, people looking forward is called looking at the weekend. You know what I mean? Where you going to party? Where you going to be? Those who are basically in rulership mode, the elites, they're thinking the next generations to come. They're thinking in 2025. They're thinking 2125. These white nationalist, Christian, right-wing fascists, because that's what they are. Trump as Musk, etc., are racist. They're thinking generations down the road, and they're terrified of what planet Earth could look like, in which it is estimated right now, if I remember, that so-called white people are 13% of the global population. That number, you add another effect called the birth rate. So, you want to understand Roe versus Wade and the interdiction of abortion, aka Black women, indigenous women, Asian women, Muslim women, they can all abort, they don't care. White Christian women, abortion becoming outlawed like in the Handmaid's Tale. They are looking at a reality in which they are absolutely fearful of a potential revenge of minorities against them for historical harms. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I just call it what it is.
All right, Kevin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, what if they just redefine what white is? I mean, when you think about it, white is defined as not having, at least in the Anglo-Saxon world, as not having not even an eighth of black blood. So as pure as possible. But that strategy is biting them in the ass, so to speak, because there are lots of people who are white passing that come from various parts of the Americas or the Middle East or other parts of Asia who can certainly pass as white, even some people with mixed parents and so on and so forth, who don't align with Black activism. If you think of somebody like a controversial figure like Andrew Tate, his dad is half Black, doesn't align at all with the politics of that you would align with, for instance, advocating for people of African descent. Yet here he is on the national stage of spewing all kinds of right-wing rhetoric that sometimes panders with the xenophobes on the right who are also white, which is interesting because based on the 1/8 rule, he's not even white. Yet there's lots of people like him that aren't fully white that can pass and even blend in to the politics that would be comfortable with many people on the right. So why the way I'm thinking, like, it's kind of almost ironic how those movements are kind of shooting themselves in the foot. If their numbers are smaller, it's only because they've engineered it. Their ancestors engineered that because they could easily, I mean, a lot of people who are called Hispanics are actually people who are white. They're just descendants of the Spaniards and other and Portuguese. So it's kind of a strange kind of politics. And when you think about it, colonialism, I mean, they did everything in their power to actually infiltrate indigenous populations to make them more white, therefore contradicting the Anglo-Saxon 1/8 rule.
All
If you
right.
don't mind,
Go
if you
ahead.
don't mind, just one last thing. So I've already said this and I predicted, and you can see this notably with now the Secretary of State and Nikki Haley. Whiteness is a concept created in which you have different levels, aka those who come from the colonial slash empirical powers are seen as
Oh, you just
white
paused
first
there.
and foremost. The
Okay.
further north you go, when you go to Europe, the further north and the further west, that's where white people are seen first. You go
Right.
further east, people don't consider themselves white. You go further south, many people will tell you, no, I'm Italian. The white people is the Germans. And yet, to the rest of the world, they are white. When you look at people, the actual Caucasians from the Caucasus Valley, such as the Kardashian, when I'm there
Mhm.
speaking with public leaders, I often ask them, are the Kardashians white? It's always interesting because many people are like, wait, time out. I never thought about this. They're white, but they're not considered white because they're not Europeans.
Right.
Whiteness evolves in the same sense as 100 years ago. White Jews, Southern Italians, and Irish people were not considered white, but they entered into the mold of whiteness for interests of powers, notably due to demographics. I am expecting the same to happen, notably with Latinos, aka white Latinos, who are white people, period. You know, you leave
Mhm.
Canada and the US. As of Mexico, they're white people, like
Mhm.
Marco Rubio, but you also get white Indians, such as Nikki Haley. So here's an interesting thing. Nikki Haley almost passed as a white woman until Donald Trump called her out in the campaign, roughly this time of last year,
Mhm.
by revealing her real name.
Mm.
Meanwhile, wannabe white dude Vivek Ramaswamy got reminded that he is a brownie
Yeah.
on the Doge
Many
team and he
times.
got kicked out. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is something that I expect. White Latinos will more and more identify with Republicans, will be entered into the mold of whiteness. Marco Rubio being the Latino who has reached the highest status in American administration, just as you will see the same happening with white Aryans. And when you were talking about the very self-hate of these organizations shooting themselves in the foot, it's just a reminder of Frantz Fanon talking about the mindset of the slave, the enslaved mindset, you look at someone such as Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, and congratulations to the black church who took them to church, who took them to court, sorry, in order to reclaim their name. Enrique Tarrio is a black man,
Yeah.
but who has been brainwashed into basically espousing white supremacist rhetoric. I
Right.
mean, but this is exactly a continuation of America's original sin, which we talk about in the second segment. 1776, all men are born free and equal, but they're keeping the slaves, aka the blacks, in the chains.
All right, we're going to move on to our next conversation piece. But before we do, a few things. Catch up on comments. Mignon Cam says, as a black woman who has filed bankruptcy, banks are always begging me to lend money when I don't need it. And we mentioned Dr. Tachi early on, and she is here. What is up, Dr. Tachi? Mignon Cam says, because they spent generations brainwashing us to talk and think like them. And then Dr. Tachi says, right. The easiest way to build your, quote, army, unquote, is to give people the gift of whiteness or white agentness. Agentness. I got that right. All right. And also, if you're watching this live via the YouTube page, we have a live poll running. The question is, are you against the way 47 and Elon Musk are running American government? So far, everyone said 100% yes. We haven't had any detractors. So we'll see what we have for our next conversation piece, just building on. 47's nationalistic christo-fascism, the return of religion or religiosity. Cesar.
So I understand maybe the description here, the terms may confuse some people. So Christo-fascism basically refers to a mixing of Christianity and fascism. In other words, you just need to look back 100 years ago, Benito Mussolini in Italy with the black shirts, Adolf Hitler with the brown shirts, a mixing of the imagery of Christianity into a regime that rejects the principles of democracy. So it masks itself as democratic as it comes to power through elections, but then it evaporates the very nature of power as quickly as possible in a matter of days, if not weeks. And in this case, when you have the nature of religion versus religiosity, religion, the traditions, the belief, etc., religiosity in reference to the nature of the practice of those values. And what we find with Donald Trump, it's neither religion nor religiosity, but it is the veneer, the mask of religion, notably because the studies during the elections, November 2024, speak to 75 to 80% of white evangelical Christians who voted for Trump. Now, I have talked about the hypocrisy of white evangelicals in voting for Trump, as Trump truly and honestly very much is a representation of anti-Christian values. Now, that said, we must understand the support to someone like Trump in the prism of the lenses of support to such a man as Billy Graham 50, 60 years ago, and to Trump, an arrival to power ever before. So they may have thought that with Reagan 40 years ago, they would succeed to such, but Reagan did not repeal Roe versus Wade. Trump did it. Furthermore, we have something very interesting that has happened, I'm going to say last week, with former governor Mike Huckabee in Israel/Palestine, talking about Judea Samaria. That's white evangelical, aka Zionist language. Why is that important to understand here? You have to understand that there is a crisis of alignment happening right now in the Jewish community. I invite people to look up videos on Google, notably on the concept of Israelism. but also to notice that more and more Jewish people, notably in the current um, Hamas versus Israel conflict, more and more Jewish people are standing up and speaking up against Zionism, absolutely opposing Hamas, absolutely opposing terrorism. That is not a question. But speaking up against the Zionist government, and I should say the right wing Zionist government of Benjamin Netanyahu, and the unlimited support that the American government, notably through Joe Biden, but even Obama, have given them, and even more with Trump. So now you end up having an alliance where Zionists are counting on white evangelical Christians because they're a surprise to most people. The majority of Zionists are actually not Jewish, the Christians, the white evangelical Christians. And where they do align is Israel power in the Middle East, and notably for its survival, lining up with white evangelicals' notions such as the rapture, a 19th century American Christian invention that is not in the Bible, but referred to as the return of Christ. An alliance in terms of creating the conditions in Israel slash Palestine for the return of Jesus Christ. And as such, how do you make that happen? You end up having someone like Donald Trump. They're basically putting the focus on the horrible trans people, the gay people, civil liberties. Meanwhile, they're going to war against the Department of Education. Who could have possibly thought? I give example Ronald Reagan, even Bush, George Bush, father and son as president, that the Department of Education would be canceled. But they see the Department of Education as enemy because it formats an ideology that is more liberal in terms of inclusiveness, and as such, in terms of factual education. At the same time, you end up seeing what is quite telling of Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, in which abortion, but also the question of immigration. Who really is American? As in that movie, Civil War, that came out, I think, last year or 2 years ago. There was in that scene in which someone saying that they're American, and the soldier asked him, "What kind of American?"
Right, I remember that.
And something that will happen. I mean, it's not that it will happen; it has happened. And the same question is happening right now, notably in France, where I come from. Birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship that a judge had to intervene. But remember, even though judges are intervening to cancel immigration decision, USAID cancellation, Department of Education, birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court is overwhelmingly right wing, and as such, this is where the framing, the creation of this christo-fascism nation is more likely to happen. They're not religious, they're not Christian, they're power hungry, and the Bible is the tool. Because even when we say Christians, it's what kind of Christians? White evangelical Christians, fundamentally racist. So I often joke about Supreme Court George Clarence Thomas having a white wife, Jeannie Thomas, who is close to Trump. If you can have a government that repeals 1973 Roe versus Wade, why wouldn't that government, white supremacist government, not repeal 1967 Loving versus Virginia that authorized interracial relationships? What would the Supreme Court Judge Clarence Thomas do? Separate from his wife? Interracial relationships banned? Interracial adoptions banned? To many people, it may seem far-fetched, but Roe versus Wade seemed far-fetched as well. Please.
I
Kevin,
think,
Kevin, just before you
yeah,
jump, I'm just going to put
yeah,
in a quick comment here. Dr. Tachi says, many so-called Christians have never cracked the Bible and rely on interpretations of religious zealots. That's why this ideology works on uneducated minds, intellectual laziness at its finest. Go ahead, Kevin.
it
Absolutely.
could happen. I think it's unlikely they'd go that far. The reason why is because the whole political franchise of the last 40 years has been a competition between Republicans and Democrats to prove who's less racist. So while the Republican has a coalition which includes racist, they also have a large swath of people who are in denial of that and
But they don't
want to
care, Kevin.
gaslight. I know, but they're trying to get what. So basically, this is where it gets a little complicated because, in a sense, there's resentment being thrown at us, but they want their cake and they want to eat it too. They want to be able to say, I'm not a racist. I'm okay with Clarence Thomas being with this white woman because he thinks like us. That's exactly what what's his name? Bill Graham, not the pastor, the politician, said a few years back. He says, no, no, we don't have a problem with black people if they're conservative like us. In other words, if you become us, we accept you. Clarence Thomas and all the other black Republicans, they accept them because they've become like them. So I think that that's the qualifier that has to be thrown in there. Like, what kind of American? Well, what kind of black American? Right? The black American that would submit to the order they want to set up.
Enrique Tarrio, type of black American, will basically
Right.
becomes an ally to white supremacy while being a traitor to his race. The
Like
Kanye West, the Kanye
Kanye
West type
West,
of
Candace
American, if it was
Owens.
the choice, Candace Owens, absolutely.
Right.
And yet, let's not forget, eventually those white evangelicals, white MAGA, white Trumplicans, eventually they see them for what they are, aka like Candace Owens, as grifters, as
Right.
basically blacks will have seen a crack in the whiteness and such, playing with the racism for their own needs, the racism of whites for their own desires of celebrity and enrichment. Yes, I agree. But at the end of the day, those people are racist. Let's not get it twisted. The slave master could have a black person as a slave catcher, but he still sees him first and foremost as a slave.
Right.
He still sees him first and foremost as black, even though he's a slave catcher. It's the same thing that happened in far too many police services, aka police forces, when you black and blue. Too black to fully be admitted into the blue group, aka police group, and too blue to truly be seen as an ally in the black community.
Right.
I'm not saying all police services. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. In far too many, and when I'm saying far too many, Milwaukee had a black police chief that did not prevent George Floyd from being tortured and being killed on live TV. So it is a matter of skin color, along a matter of mindset, but ultimately, America is built first and foremost on the notion of race and capitalism, working one with another for the interests of power. With Trump and his mindset and his cronies now in power, we saw, I can't remember if it was yesterday or 2 days ago in Cincinnati, some Proud Boys, KKK people feeling brave and being responded by the community. In New Orleans, Black Hebrew Israelites coming out and walking. Is it going back to the 1950s? We might be going back to the 1920s. Where is our Ida B. Wells? Where is our Marcus Garvey? I'm here. Where are the others? Because this is through the challenge. So I hate to say this. Too many Black people became asleep in the thinking of integration. Now they're going to have to become woke, to become awakened, because the other side, the white Christian nationalists, aka fascism, they are in power. So we may not see lynching per se, but we will see policies such as the war on EDI, aka DEI, the war against critical race theory, the war against social justice for all minorities, including white allies. So something that really pissed me off today, I mean, really pissed me off is a strong term. I saw a video, a well-meaning video of a white man married to a black woman for 15 years. And the point of the video was how your life changes for being married to a white woman, to a black woman, sorry. What was he showing? He was showing that he uses shea butter and he wears a bonnet to
Oh,
go to bed. That's ridiculous. White allies, you want to show your allyship? You want to show you're married to a black woman for X amount of years, that you have biracial / mixed children that you love? Show us the black history that you learned. Show us the black culture. Show us that you're going to the protests. Show us that you're taking a stop this BS about, I use moisturizer, shea butter, I wear a bonnet to bed, I eat griot, I eat soul food, I dance compas, I dance. No, we're not going back to the 1950s. We're going back to the 1920s, 1930s. Who's really going to stand up? Who's really going to be woke and stay woke? These are the conversations we need to have.
I think the challenge is that for a lot of people, they only see what's in front of them. So, and if they're not seeing, like in their experience, what they heard about from pre-60s lynchings and towns being burned to the ground, because it's not visible, there is a sense of complacency that says the racism isn't explicit in the sense that it was with George Wallace saying segregation today, segregation tomorrow, etc., etc. And because that's not the level of the racism, there's a get out of jail free card, because often when people are speaking, you have to then now parse back whether they're speaking veiled or whether they genuinely believe they're not racist because they said X, Y, or Z that isn't explicit. That's, I think, the challenge a lot of people have. So what ends up happening is that the black person who might be like yourself, who sees beneath the layer, you have to fight against everyone else that thinks you're crazy because they don't see beneath the layer. They don't see beneath the surface. Whereas in the 60s, everybody saw it, right? Like it was televised when people were being kicked out of lunch counters. It was televised when we were being posed. Now it's not. And when it is, it's always like, we know this is like possibly racist, but because the person didn't explicitly say it, there could be another reason in the mind of so many people, which gives them the get out of jail free card.
You're talking about Republican pundits such as uh, the white analyst on CNN, Scott Jennings, but even our brother, Shermichael, oh my God, I forget, Carmichael or Shermichael, well, he's black, and it's always, refute, diffuse, deflect, gaslight.
Right.
Like they never answer a question directly, and anything and everything that will justify whatever Trump and the Republicans basically do. Sorry, Dr. Vibe, please go ahead.
The gentleman's name is Michael Singleton is his name.
Michael Singleton,
Yeah,
yes.
so that's
Very smart brother. Very smart brother. Honestly, very smart brother. And even Scott Jennings. But the mentality and the character speak truthfully.
the only thing I just want to add is interesting, Kevin, how you talked about back in the 1960s. But isn't it interesting? There is more media coverage than ever before.
Right.
In the 1960s, there was not this thing called social media. Like everyone, not but most people can have these.
Yes.
You have your own broadcast network on these. You can create your own platform on here. But it seems that from what you two are saying is that less people are paying attention. That goes back maybe to a little bit what Dr. Tati said, intellectual laziness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. And part of it is being overwhelmed because you have more of these. The problem is there's more information that's conflicting each other.
Right.
And a lot of it is a lot of the information is deliberately sensational
Of course.
to drive up views. So you're not necessarily always getting true information, you're getting half truths.
There you go.
Brother Kevin, you are correct, but I want to warn people,
Mhm.
as Dr. Tachi said very well, intellectual laziness, because it cannot be an excuse. People
True.
make a choice. I always say this. People choose to either watch what I call the BCK, brain cell killer show, over something educational. People make the choice. Yeah, the brain cell killer show. That's what they are. They literally, that's what they are.
If
Yeah.
Dr. Tachi's watching, I know she would love that. Go ahead.
There is an academic concept called the dumbing down of America, and
Hmm.
TV shows and notably content. If you look at, to be honest, I'm not saying all of them, but if you look as a group in terms of our intellectual, a lower level of intellectualism, but also of eloquence. Perfect example, Donald Trump. He exemplifies that, but he exemplifies that as a reflection of the group that votes for him in majority, that he caters to. He doesn't
Right.
care about a Cesar, a Kevin, a Dr. Vibe, or a Dr. Tachi. He doesn't care. I mean, if you have a doctor in front of your name, he doesn't care, even if your name might be Dr. Dre, other than to come maybe DJ for him, or to come
But if you have the name Snoop,
I was exactly going to say Snoop.
Exactly.
So what happens is when you look at 5 years ago, 9 minutes and a half recording by a black teenager of the murder of George Floyd,
Mhm.
you had an intersection of factors from a pandemic, nothing on TV, no sports, TV shows were all reruns, etc., etc. Going to the protest became something to do. It became something like, oh, shoot, what am I saying that I am if I don't go? It's just as if we talk in the professional sector, many organizations deciding to do DEI/EDI in a performative way. And as such, when you see the arrival of Trump 2.0 in power, organizations such as Walmart and McDonald's officially walking out of DEI, but actually often it's just a rebranding, a reframing, kind of seeming
Yeah.
more appealing to color blindness as
Right.
Trump and the government wants. But then you get organizations such as, for example, Costco, will choose to stand officially on the DEI policies and even majority of Fortune 500 companies because they clearly see the numbers that it is beneficial to them, that when the company is seen as being more inclusive of racial minorities as black, sexual identities as LGBTQ, and notably of women, they perform better because something people must not forget. This time that we're living in, this 3 weeks into the Trump's presidency, we must not be overwhelmingly alarmist. It's 3 weeks in, and we can talk absolutely about fascism, a coup d'etat, and techno, etc., etc. The midterms are in 2 years, and then 2 years after that, you have the federal elections. Unless Trump succeeds somehow, some way, very unlikely, but succeeds in getting a third term, aka he's trying to die as president because he knows what will happen right next.
Hmm.
This
Right.
is basically what we see here. So the whole connection to the aspect of christo-fascism religion is absolutely centered in the quest for power in order to deliver a certain reading, a closed mind reading of the Bible. We should not put all Christians together into this Christo-fascism lens. And even saying white evangelicals, we must not put all white evangelicals into this.
Right.
But it is the overwhelming majority, as the studies talked about 75 to 80% of them supporting Trump. I asked the question, are we going back to the 1950s when blacks were sprayed with hoses when they were protesting? Or are we risking a return to the 1920s and 30s when blacks were being lynched?
Hmm.
Where are our Ida B. Wells? Where's our Marcus Garvey? Where's our W.E.B. Du Bois? I'm here. Dr. Umar Johnson is here.
Mhm.
Dr. Vibe is here. Dr. Tachi is here. And even our white allies. What are you going to do? Like I said, enough of this. I love black people, shea butter, bonnet, dancing, and I love soul food. Enough of that. Stop. Be woke, stay woke.
All right, we're going to move to our last conversation topic. We're all based in a country called Canada. And one of the national parties, the Liberal Party, is having a leadership contest going on because their leader and the prime minister currently has announced his resignation coming up. So we'd love to get both gentlemen's look on the Liberal leadership race and Canadian politics since the tariffs. Kevin, why don't you lead on this?
It's actually interesting. What's interesting about I often find that things happen in cycles and that history repeats in different forms. This time in the early 1980s, I think it was 1984, the leadership of the Liberals was contested. At the time, another Trudeau had stepped down. He went for a walk in the snow, and he was very unpopular. Canada faced at the time a recession, double digit unemployment, and interest rates approaching 20%. People were walking away from their homes, and the economy was in disarray. Certain regions of the country were in upheaval against the Liberal government. You had Alberta was upset because of the National Energy Program and the tax that was being put on that. You had on their oil resources. You had Quebec nationalism was very strong and separatism was on the rise. And you had the night of the knives is what they call it, with the backstabbing of Rene Levesque that Trudeau Senior did. So Trudeau, in spite of his accomplishments, Senior stepped down, and after a decade or more of what would be called the left-leaning posturing of Trudeau Senior, embracing of multiculturalism, social change, bilingualism, the Charter of Rights. You had the sense at the time that the Liberals needed to go for a more pro-business friendly, centrist, moderate, attractive looking guy in a suit and tie who was clean cut, and that guy was John Turner. And he was supposed to bring the Liberal Party back to this moderate centrist area that would make them competitive again with Mulroney conservatives. Mulroney was also this sort of slick politician, this young guy coming up that was ambitious, um, was seen at the time as too right wing, and the Liberals would come back. The Liberals got annihilated later that year, 1984. And we saw the same thing happen to the same very conservative party. In 1993, double digit unemployment, high interest rates, and a disgraced Brian Mulroney. He left the stage, and the 40-something youngish woman named Kim Campbell took over, and everybody had high hopes. She wasn't from Quebec, they said. She was from the West, and so on and so forth. And they didn't think Chrétien was photogenic enough to lead, and they get reduced to 2 seats. Same thing, Paul Martin, 2005, 2003, rather. Chrétien, who was not particularly unpopular, but there was a fatigue within the party over his leadership, a feeling that maybe he was moving to the left a little bit too much. Um, Paul Martin was seen as the centrist, the blue liberal, the more business savvy guy that was loved by everyone, and he came in, and look what happened to him. So I think that the same thing could happen this time around. I think the Liberal Party is possibly making the same mistake. It's really hard to tell. It might work in their favor, but it sounds like they're going to be going for Mark Carney, the head of the Bank of Canada, or former head of the Bank of Canada, and I think he resigned to go to England to be the head of their bank, and has
Yeah.
come back to enter politics. He's now seen as sort of the more reasonable, more anchored, more grown up liberal leader, um, done with pretty boy, snowboarding, drama teacher, I love everybody, happy ways, sunny ways. Clearly, Canadians are upset and feel that um, Trudeau Jr. was underwhelming or overwhelmed by things outside of his control. COVID would be the most notable one. The rise of Trump and the hostility shown towards Canada is another situation. The global disruption of the supply chain post COVID and the sparking of massive inflation, they're blaming him on that. And I think you could point to some policies, much like his father, he imposed a tax, though we call it a carbon tax now, that has become very deeply unpopular. And I think that the Liberal Party brain thrust is looking at Mark Carney as the guy that's seen as credible. He's credible economically. He's the Bank of Canada. He seems to be able to articulate the policies that they're looking for. I would caution Liberal supporters. I think the mood in the country is very much anti-elite. And Mark Carney, in spite of I think he was born in the North, if I'm not mistaken. He's not from Central Canada, but in spite of that, he's viewed as being part of the Central Canada elite. And I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who said that very thing, that this guy it's a conspiracy to put an elitist in power, and he's selected. I think that if Trudeau's leadership has tainted the party, it's going to be hard for the Liberal Party to recover, even with Mark Carney as leader. And Mark Carney as leader might be counterproductive if they want to win against Pierre Poilievre. So you could be looking at another situation where the Liberals get wiped out once again because they've made the same mistake multiple times, which is to go for an insider, perceived insider, not necessarily an insider, a perceived insider as their leader. I would say that if they want to go with someone who has political experience, I I have heard that Christy Clark from BC was touted as a potential candidate. That might have been a wise decision. An outsider in the sense of not being part of the Liberal caucus, former Premier of British Columbia, government experience, charismatic woman, attractive woman. And I think that if they're going for people that are from the existing caucus, if not Mark Carney, they're looking at Chrystia Freeland. I think that could be a disaster for them. I just don't see the voters, whether it's rational or not. There's a hate on for the Liberals for multiple reasons. Some of it cultural, some of it economic. And I think that if they don't have someone with a fresh perspective coming from the outside that isn't tied to any of the institutions, then I think it's going to be difficult.
So we got to put some perspective, I would say, because first, you are correct that there is an anti-elite sentiment, Canada, the US, Western world. But in the eastern provinces, the Maritimes, the Liberals did win in the elections. But they won because they were able to detach themselves from the image of Trudeau at the federal level. When you look at, for example, someone like Carney, he likes to claim that he's an outsider, but of course, he is an insider.
Right.
However, he's not a career politician. That is a benefit to him. When you look at someone like Chrystia Freeland, she basically backstabbed Justin Trudeau. Of course, she acted for her own self-interest because uh, the revealing of the budget would have basically been put on her, but it is to believe that there would have been other plans. after that. However, when she resigned, when she did, that was the coup de grace to Trudeau, enforcing him to announce his own resignation, aka his own vice prime minister is jumping ship.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at it right now, and you were talking about the whole elitist aspect, I want to remind Canadians, Mr. Poilievre, what has he done? What has he done professionally? What has he been? He's been an elected MP since age 24. He's a career politician.
Correct.
He is a career politician. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about Joe Biden, public service since 1973, aka 50 years. Pierre Poilievre was younger than him. You see?
And he was
So,
active before that. He was active. I think he was an activist in the conservative movement, even going back to the reform days when he was in high school. Like,
yes,
so
but
his entire life, he was like from
yeah,
high
yeah,
school on. Yeah.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I am not knocking him down because effectively there is an erosion of trust that comes with power maintained too long. It is impressive that Trudeau has been there since 1915, if my year is correct. Basically,
2015. Yeah.
1915, sorry, 2015, yes.
Yeah.
Basically 10 years. That is
Right.
impressive. But you look at before, Harper was there for almost as many years following the debacle of the sponsorship scandal under Paul
Right.
Martin, aka Jean Chrétien. You
Right.
see what I mean? So it is a cycle that's happening. And in this cycle that's happening, what we are ending up seeing is the question with Mark Carney coming in, there has been a boost in sentiments favorable to the liberals. So the question will become, are the conservatives who are likely to win? That is not the question. The question becomes, will it be a majority conservative government or will it be a minority conservative government? And in the best interest of Canada, it is always better to have a minority, whatever party, government. And notably, as we are speaking right now, of a long-standing relationship with our nearest neighbor, aka USA, under a Trump administration that's looking at Canada from a lens of tariffs, but also jokingly to some, but Trudeau said very seriously, as a potential 51st state. Again, I'm not trying to sound alarmist, but if Donald Trump decides to invade Canada, what are we going to do?
I just want to jump in here. This whole tariff thing, well, a few things. First of all, two black gentlemen who I very much respect feel that Carney has a good shot of winning the election.
I won't go that far, but better than Trudeau, yes.
Yes, and then the other thing is, this thing with the tariffs allegedly has brought Canadians together national-wise.
Absolutely.
And my question is, who do you trust the future Canada people are going to probably say with against 47? Do you trust Poilievre, who's of the same side of the political fence? Or do you trust Carney, who's on the other side of the political fence? Plus, who has more experience dealing with economics and economy?
It's an easy question to answer. And I totally have an admitted elitist bias for anyone who wonders. Totally Mark Carney. But to give you an example, even Doug Ford, no, Zaza, stop. Even Doug Ford would make a better candidate as Prime Minister of Canada.
Well,
but
that's what I thought. That's what I thought would maybe happen because he messed up the other day because last week he was caught on a hot mic saying that he approved 47 getting elected again. And he then said,
he supported him.
He said, but I didn't know he was going to turn out like he did.
Yeah,
But
he said he got stabbed in the back.
But at the same time, to what extent can we hold that against him when even in the US, people who voted for Trump
well,
are saying the same? And here in Canada, people
but
will basically are
yeah, but
Canadian MAGAs.
I agree. But people don't look again. Dr. Tachi's comment comes up again. Intellectual laziness.
No,
Right.
absolutely. And this is where I tell people, believe a person by what they tell you they are, and then the actions that they do. So even here, many people will basically could be called Canadian MAGA, would basically be feeling the burn of Donald Trump's tariffs upon their own businesses, but also upon the price of goods. Absolutely. But no, I think Carney would be a better pick than Poiliev when we look at experience, etc., etc. I mean, as inviolable as he would be to be a career politician, aka an MP since age 24, it's one thing to say that about yourself or your son or your friend and be so happy for them. It's another thing to think that person should be the one running the country.
Mm.
You see what I mean? So, but we know people don't vote with reason, they vote first with emotions.
Emotion.
It is not an insult, it is just a fact.
Fact.
Yeah.
It is just a fact. Back in 2008, I was very honest with people when I went to work in Detroit, Michigan, notably in Dearborn, that I wasn't going there because I so much approve of all of Barack Obama policies, but because of the symbolism of a potential black president. That's emotion. It's because I'm
Mhm.
black. You see what I mean? So it's the same here, but the question will also be, there's a lot of time left. I mean, before the Canadian federal elections, and a lot of things could happen by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Kevin, I'm just
yeah.
gonna say the boss of Cesar's house. I saw her come in a few moments
Yeah.
ago. We
We're
got
almost
to
done.
start wrapping up. So I'm gonna leave the final
Yeah.
comment to you, Kevin.
So final comment. So a couple points to make. Regarding Carney, is experience going to be the ballot question this election? I think Cesar is correct in saying that it's going to be the emotion, and if it's based on emotion, it probably won't be. That being said, I agree that Carney has a chance more so than the others. The other point I want to make up is I want to bring up is the whole thing about Doug Ford. That's very common. You have to understand the conservative movement. Basically, you could, on this point, you could break down the conservative movement into two parts: the partisan and the philosophical. People who are philosophically, economically, or conservative and or socially conservative in Canada will probably oppose Trump and would have always opposed Trump. Those who put partisanship ahead of their ideology will support Trump because he's not on the left. He's on the right, and he's the guy to lead the right. And that's misguided, but it's out of partisanship loyalties. It's a contradiction. Pierre Poilievre was a prodigy of Stephen Harper. Anti-trade, pro-tariff rhetoric is antithetical. I was in this party. I was running when Pierre was running, Pierre Poilievre. I know how these guys think because I was one of them. We were pro-free market, pro-free trade party to the point where they crawled on broken glass to kick out a guy from the party, David Orchard, for being anti-free trade. Right? So I remember those days. So this kind of embrace of Trump is a complete betrayal of everything from Mulroney up till Harper, basically. So that's why I don't take it seriously. Even the comparisons with Pierre Poilievre being seen as Trump presents a problem because he can't be, because it just betrays what Harper had built.
Well, the Canadian landscape may be different, but don't forget something here, Kevin. The nature of politics, but also society, has drastically changed, aka devolved, further in the last years, among the last decades.
Right.
Political correctness is borderline at the window. Even in the Canadian, how do you call it, the House of Commons, the political correctness is disappearing. And as such, when you look back in 2022, January, Pierre Poilievre going to give his support to the white men or the Freedom Convoy. I don't think it takes a genius to know that he wouldn't have done that if they were blacks or indigenous or Muslims or gay men doing that Freedom Convoy. And as such, when I see the potential of him coming to power beyond his logic of color blindness and rejection of systemic racism, it does align with Trump. Not at the same level.
No, not same level, but to some degree.
As I remind public servants, never forget, when a conservative party comes to power and they are in majority, there is one topic that always become centerfold: rights. And when you are able to bring to question abortion rights for women, you also start to dismantle other rights for other minorities if you have a conservative party in majority. That's why I'm saying I don't see Carney winning because he's liberal. But he's the boost that he has given, and even other parties, even Jagmeet Singh, etc., I can see a conservative party in minority in power.
Well,
I don't see them touching abortion, though, but that's a topic for another day.
If they are in majority, a conservative
Yes.
party by default
Maybe.
will address abortion.
You think
If
so?
they are in
Okay.
majority,
I haven't seen Harper do it.
It's
I didn't see
across
Harper
the-
do it, and he had a majority.
And no, but they did have the talk about abortion even under Harper.
But he
was
gagged the
brave-
guy that brought it forward, like he punished him.
But they did have the conversation on it.
Okay.
That's what I mean. I'm not saying they're going
right.
to pass. No, please.
Pass
don't get
it.
me
No,
wrong.
but they'll, okay.
Reagan was in majority, and they didn't repeal Roe versus Wade, right?
Right.
Well, let's put it this way. The conservatives have to get a majority because the minority, they won't. I don't know if they'll get the support of the NDP. So the conservatives have to have. Yeah, right. So the conservatives have to get a majority. If they don't get a majority, we're going to have a minority government, and it won't be conservative minority. It'll be liberal minority, liberal NDP.
Right.
So that's. But good times yet to come, gentlemen.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Cesar's boss popped in when but thank you because whenever she pops in, I know it's countdown.
That's right.
So, okay.
She's sent by her mom. It's a conspiracy.
I'm not getting near that. No. Sorry, Kevin. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Enough, you are always invited to come by here. Cesar, always a pleasure. You can get hold of Cesar. Email president@rootsandculturecanada.com. Facebook, Cesar Remy Emery. Gentlemen, thank you as always for taking the most valuable thing you have in your lives, times to share with our audience. And Kevin, don't escape us now. We need you back more.
Okay. Kevin is actually coming over to watch the Super Bowl.
Yes. Yeah, I'm coming over in a minute.
I'm not actually going to be watching. I'm not really that interested, believe it or not.
Trust me, I am not. But I have a logic. I've never made it a secret. I'm not a fan of American football, but I know
you're not.
There is one game to watch, or at least to know something about, is the Super Bowl, because I don't want to come on Sunday morning at the office or talking to anyone, looking as I do and revealing to what extent I don't know and I don't care about American football. So I make that one effort for one game.
Don't tell me the highlight. Take care, gentlemen. Enjoy the Super Bowl party. Be well. Take care. All right, everybody. That is it for another conversation day. As always, want to say thank you for taking the most important thing, your time to hang out with us today, as always. So as we jump off, please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, to advertise your business, product, or service on the platform, please email me at dr.vibe at the dr.vibeshow.com. All right. And to close off, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and the Dr. Vibe Show website, which is the drvibeshow.com. And that is it for this conversation. So as we end off, this is how we do it. Live your life as a dream. If you dream it, let me slow down. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And 2 more things. If you're not making money, make history and make it better. God bless. Peace to all. Keep the faith and walk good.